Island Awards 2 years in a row.
The voice of Nassau Community College.
This is the award-winning 90.3 WHPC HD Garden City.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Play WHPC.
And available on Odyssey, TuneIn, iHeart, and on the WHPC app.
90.3 WHPC.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC. Also streaming on nccradio.org. Tell your friends and your neighbors, even if they're far away from the Garden City, just go online, nccradio.org. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com. This program is repeated on Sunday evenings at 11 p.m. So hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It all depends when you are listening or watching. Gewalt. You know, you can actually see us live in the studio. You can see what I'm wearing on my head and around my face on Facebook Live at WHPC or on my on the HPC Facebook page or on my own at Anshul Pearl. So hello on the radio, hello online, hello to the world. If you have a comment to make, feel free to check in with us on Facebook and let us know. We'll be more than happy to recognize your comments and move forward with that. So hello everybody. Do you know, I want to say hello to Zalman Weg, unbelievable, distinguished individual. I know I'm a week early, but you know, rabbis are either late or early. That's how it works. So I want to give you some unsolicited advice about next Sunday. Next Sunday is the day after Saturday, after Shabbos. Now that's brilliant. You woke up this early just to hear such information like that. But you know what makes Sunday so special? It's called Father's Day. And I want to give Gina Brandiston and everybody out there some free advice. What the most memorable gifts you can give your father this Father's Day. And good morning to Linda Zellickson, good morning, and to everybody. So, looking ahead, the first thing I suggest for Father's Day, now you've got a week's advance knowledge now, so you can't say to me, Rabbi, why didn't you tell me? I would have done this, I would have done that. I'm telling you right now, Sharon Jacobs, welcome. All I can say is I'm giving you a heads up a whole week with some unbelievable advice. Typically, a therapist would charge all kinds of money to give you this advice of how to celebrate Father's Day, and it would cost you through the nose. Here, dear friends, free advice. And you know, as they say in French, you get what you pay for. So the first thing I would suggest in terms of Father's Day, it includes Mother's Day, but let's talk about Father's Day today, the gift of acknowledgement. A father can feel like an invisible parent as children grow. Behind the scenes, he has supported, cared, has been concerned, while mom handled the day-to-day goings-on. A most incredible way of expressing love is recognizing the good that we have been given, especially to one who is used to being overlooked. In Jewish wisdom, they call this hakaras hatov, literally recognizing the good. Beyond simply seeing, it means we take a moment to contemplate and acknowledge. So this Father's Day, your father, show your father that you really see him and don't take him for granted. Think back. Think back of all the trips taken, footballs thrown, nighttime snacks shared, whatever you can think of from your youth that remains etched in your mind. Acknowledge the scenarios of your father's patience, encouragement, and attention to help you attain your goals. Today is your chance to give the gift of recognition to your father. For those who are just joining us, I want to let you know that I'm talking a little bit about next Sunday, Father's Day, of how we can recognize our father in a particular good way. So the next thing I would suggest, put on your list, is the gift of uninterrupted time. What do I mean? As I say hello and welcome to Levana Cohen Lichter, the gift of uninterrupted time, and congratulations to Levana Lichter. She was honored just recently for her unbelievable, uninterrupted commitment to Jewish education here in Long Island for so many years. We wish you Hatzlacha Rabbah. So, what does it mean to give one's father uninterrupted time? Undiluted, pure, simple moments together are a gift. We are given the opportunity to bond, share conversations and experiences. Once the moment passes, we can never get it back again. So, why not, in honor of Father's Day, plan a trip or take your father out and you do whatever whatever he loves to do. Be patient, be kind, turn off your device. I think those who are listening, who read Newsday, there's a whole article how students in schools, I can see this in my world, but in schools, more and more students are not focusing on their learning. They're all day looking at their smartphones. So turn off your device on Father's Day. Sometimes we think we are present, but emotionally we're absent. When you are together, take the time to celebrate your father. Recreate memories, share thoughts that show your love. This is your opening to tell your father, I'm so happy you are my dad, or you've shown me how to get through the hard stuff and climb a mountain. Thank you, Dad. The words may be hard to say, but you'll be so happy that you sent them. Now, a third suggestion on making Father's Day significant, the gift of relevance. You know, as the years pass, a father may sense that he has become irrelevant. The child who used to ask for help is now the one called upon to figure out a new gadget. Instead of waiting by the window for Daddy to come home, it's Dad who is anticipating a child's return. A father has much life wisdom to offer. Judaism teaches, ask your father and he will tell you. With years comes experience, heartbreak, loss, insight, and understanding. So seek out your father's words. Discover what life allowed him to learn. Dad, if you could meet yourself at my age, what would you say? You know, when I have to sit down with a family, when a parent has passed away, one of my questions is, what advice did your parents give you throughout life? They may not even be sitting down and say, I'd like to give you this advice, kind of introduction, but what can you learn from your parents? What attitude, what outlook did they have? So again, on Father's Day, why don't you ask your father, if you could meet yourself at my age, what would you say? Listen, don't be snarky. Open your heart and your mind. It's not just about success and finances. We can learn too from all the mess-ups and the disappointments. Dad has much to give. It's up to us to receive. I'm not finished, dear. I'm not finished. The gift of peace. This is number 4. When children get together, old rivalries tend to erupt. Arguing, fighting, divisions, and put-downs between sisters and brothers sap the joy out of family time. Shalom, peace in Hebrew, is one of the most meaningful gifts you can give your father. Peace isn't merely an absence of war. It's a sense of security, well-being, and unity. Shalom is related to the Hebrew word shalem, which means wholeness, because when we have peace, we are whole. Complete human beings who love others as we love our very selves. So, on Father's Day, make an effort to create an atmosphere of peace as a tribute to your dad. Hold off from the anger, the bitterness, the resentment. Whether it is peace with your family or even peace with your father, you will know that you have brought joy to your dad with your very presence. And number 5, my friends, number five, my friends, I can't believe what I'm saying. The gift of forgiveness. You know, most dads have tried their very best. Sure, mistakes were made. Perhaps there were hurts, missed opportunities, and nights that you found yourself crying in bed. But know that if your dad could, he would erase all those moments, go back, and try again. Life is too short to carry the heavy load of bitterness and resentment. We're all simply human beings. We fail. Hey, we fall. We want to love and to be loved. Forgiveness brings with it healing and serenity. Dig deep and draw upon your power of compassion and tolerance. It is time to walk a new path. So, my friends, I'm giving you fair warning. Don't say I didn't tell you. In preparation, you got a whole week now to make next Sunday's Father's Day something really good for your father. Give your father a smile. Show him that you are glad to have this time together. That smile will be your gift that gives your father fortitude and spirit to be able to face life's storms. And I would say, approach this Father's Day with the words of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory. He said the following: love transforms us. It makes us beautiful in the eyes of those who love us. It makes us real. Also, allow love to transform your relationship with your dad. Appreciate the blessing you've been given, the blessing of having a father in your life. I'd now like to share with you something that I posted on my social media platforms this Friday, and the response was unbelievable from around the world. I actually made a confession. Yep, I know that's not typical in the Jewish tradition, making confessions, and certainly not in public, but I made a confession. As I say hello to Jeffrey Hirsch. You see, when I was a young rabbi, and I first encountered someone with depression, I vividly remember thinking to myself, why can't he just snap out of it? What does he mean when he says he sleeps most of the day and can't concentrate on anything? We're all tired and dealing with stress. And I would say, just resolve to get out of bed and get going. I remember not being able to understand why this person was so depressed. After all, by all measures, his life was pretty good. If he were to just focus on the blessings and simply choose to be positive, he wouldn't be depressed at all, as we say hello to Laura May. Looking back, I am incredibly grateful that I didn't articulate any of these sentiments to him. But nevertheless, I'm sharing this with you today, our wonderful listening audience, and the world of Facebook Live. I feel kind of ashamed and even guilty for having been so ignorant and insensitive to what depression is all about. So with this in mind, I want to discuss with you a little thoughts in response to someone who asked the question, why do I suffer from mental illness? Can you tell me why God gave me a mental illness? Why has he made me suffer? I'm not a bad person. Every soul journeys down into this world with 2 suitcases. One is full of the challenges the soul must face during its lifetime. The other suitcase is full of talents and strengths necessary to withstand those challenges. The suitcase of challenges is open for us during the course of our lifetime. But the suitcase of strengths and talents we must open ourselves. So, dear friend, your soul's challenge is mental illness. I don't know why. But I do know that your mission is to use your talents to turn the pain and frustration into a positive force. Because of your openness and willingness to share your experiences, you are an inspiration to others who have mental illness. You bring hope and light to those who are not as strong as you by showing them just how much they can achieve if they focus on their abilities. You can also bring understanding and insight to those who have not themselves experienced the pain of mental illness. I, for one, yes, this guy on the radio now, have learnt an invaluable lesson from speaking to you and to speaking to other good people I know when they've opened up to me about these challenges. Do you remember our conversation when I asked you what was the hardest thing about having mental illness? And the answer you gave me was silence. When people discover that you suffer from mental illness, they don't know what to say, and the conversation comes to an abrupt and an awkward end. So I ask you, what would you like them to say? Your answer amazed me, dear friends. I want to tell you, I was amazed. I was brought to tears. This was her answer. You said, I wish they would ask me questions about my illness. I wish they would show an interest in understanding what I am going through. I wish they would give me the chance to share what I am experiencing rather than letting me suffer alone. I'm not sure everyone is as willing to talk as you are, but I suspect that for many, the stigma attached to mental illness hurts more than anything else. So, here I am, dear friends. I want to say thank you to this individual for letting me see it from your perspective. I promise to pass on the lesson. Hashem, God has presented your soul with a challenge, but He's also given you a bright and warm personality and strength of character that can stand up to the challenges that you face. This is a gift that I hope you will share with the world. So good morning to Stacy Hirsch Lambert, and for those on the radio wondering, what am I throwing in names in the middle of our conversation, is because you have the opportunity. Go to our Facebook.com and put my name in there, Anshul Perl or WHPC, and we will look at your comments. Now, I'd like to talk about the path of least resistance. This week's Torah portion tells us the story of a group of men who were unwilling to bring the Passover offering on its appointed, unable to do that, to bring a particular offering at his appointed time. And they approached Moses with a sincere request. Why should we lose out? It so happened that these individuals had been occupied with a good deed. According to some, it was nothing less than carrying the remains of Joseph from Egypt en route to his final resting place in Shechem in the Holy Land. And because of their contact with the bones, they were now ritually impure and therefore unfit to bring this offering. Well, Moses consults with God and was told that, in fact, the men are quite right. Henceforth, moving forward, those who are ritually impure or far away at the time of Passover offering, which was brought on the 14th day of Nisan, would be given a second chance exactly 1 month later on the 14th day of Iyar to make good their lost opportunity. You know, the reason why I bring this up is because there are many important lessons from this particular law. This particular holiday is called Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, which is discussed at great length yesterday in our Torah reading. I want to know, of course, it's never too late. There are second chances in life for all of us. Or that God sometimes waits to see if we really want something badly enough to demand it, and only then does he give it to us. We just have to ask for it. But now I'd like to share with you an important message I once heard from a former head or a very important leader in Johannesburg, an individual, Rabbi Mordechai Shakokovitz, may he rest in peace. He said that what those men in Moses' day did was actually quite inspiring. You see, they didn't really have to come and plead with Moses for a second chance. After all, they had a perfect alibi. They could have simply said, "Sorry, we're busy with another mitzvah." And they were. They were spiritually unable to participate. They had no reason to feel guilty. They couldn't be faulted, and yet it did bother them. They felt left out and genuinely desired to be together with their brothers and sisters in the observance of another mitzvah. At that time was the Passover offering. You see, people who have every opportunity to be free of obligation and willfully choose to actively seek obligation are indeed deserving of honorable mention. It is right that they should be singled out in the Torah for their sincerity and devotion. We're all very good at making excuses. It's too cold, it's too hot, too expensive, too difficult, etc., etc. It reminds me of the waiter going into in Florida, and the three women are sitting over there, in the restaurant, and the waiter says, "Is anything okay?" Too many of us take the path of least resistance. Parents arranging a bar mitzvah for their son sometimes look for the easy way out. Can we do it now? Can we do it then? They'll be less demanding of them. He's very active in school sports program. I mean, we all know how many excuses we find for what we are trying to do. Sometimes, even sadly, brides and grooms don't always appreciate the beautiful way of Judaism that can offer our most intimate relationships. Do we really have to attend the classes, Rabbi? Is the mikveh compulsory? The difference between success and a failure is that a failure makes excuses and success makes a plan. Let me repeat that for those who may have not got it. The difference between a success and a failure is that a failure makes excuses and a success makes a plan. So, dear friends, let's not look for excuses. Let's not opt out for the easy way out. Let us learn from the men in the wilderness who had every excuse in the book, yet happily chose to look for a new mitzvah and to share in the good deed of their community. Thank you so much. Shavua Tov to Patty Fuchs. So let's move on to our next subject, something that we constantly, as you get older, you come to think about these things. As I mentioned in the synagogue, that Shabbos, the Saturday, the observance of Shabbos, coming to the synagogue, spending a few hours together in learning, in study, in prayer, and at a Kiddush. For those who may never experience Shabbos, Shabbos is a day of thinking. There are many questions in life that we have, struggles and challenges. The best time to think about this is on a Saturday, when we, in a sense, put aside all the things that disturb us, that bang at our minds, and we can become a little more spiritual in our thinking. And if a person's in a more of a relaxed mood and puts aside all the mundane, materialistic things that bother us throughout the week, a person can think and think deeper and find answers and find strength and find enthusiasm and find the passion to what life and what Hashem, all the blessings that we all have. So here's my question for today. How do we balance the old with the new? The ancient and the venerable with the latest and the greatest? How do we speak to a generation that views traditions as antiquated relics of the past, Is old necessarily old-fashioned? Is dated automatically outdated? Can we in fact embrace modernity without compromising our long-established values? And how do we pass it on to our children? If you find this topic hurtful or being too personal, turn off the radio. But if you are, have the courage, keep listening. We find an interesting contrast in the Torah portion that we read yesterday. At the beginning of the reading, we find instructions to Aaron, the first high priest, to kindle a menorah, the candelabra. This was a golden candelabra in the sanctuary of the holy temple of old. And we read how Aaron did so. What does it mean? To his credit, he did exactly as he was told with no changes, no deviations or embellishments. He followed the tradition of how he was to light that menorah. Later on in the portion, we read the instructions to Moses. That's Aaron's brother. And he was to fashion 2 silver trumpets. And what were these trumpets for? To be used to call the leaders to a meeting, or the people to assembly, or to announce it was time to take a break. The Talmud tells us that the trumpets were to be made by Moses, and they were only for him, and not for subsequent generations. So on the one hand, we're hearing about Aaron having to light the menorah in exactly the way God commanded him. At the same time, Torah tells us that Moses was to use trumpets to gather everybody else, but the Talmud says that was only for him to do. What's the difference? Why the interesting difference? The menorah, a basic staple of the temple, is a fundamental symbol of our faith. It represents God's light, the Torah, the spiritual enlightenment with which the temple illuminates the whole world. Conversely, on the other hand, the trumpets that Moses fashioned were simply tools. It was that era's microphone to call everybody together. There was no phones. There was no WhatsApps. There was no, anything like that. So you had a microphone. What was his microphone of his time? It was these trumpets when they had to be called to go to battle or whatever else, or to announce some special festival day. So the message, the menorah was the message. The trumpets were the medium. The menorah, on one hand, is a basic core value. The other, the trumpets, is a means to an end, a means of communications. One is eternal, the lighting of the menorah, and non-negotiable, and the other is guided by pragmatics. And this really relates very much to how we must look at Judaism in our times. If a trumpet doesn't work and someone invents a loudspeaker, we may very well put aside the trumpet and embrace the new loudhailer, the new loudspeaker. At the same time, every generation needs a menorah. And the fact that we do not have a holy temple now is tragic. But not every generation needs trumpets. Moses had trumpets. And what do you and me, what do I do to trumpet my thoughts and to share them with you? And I thank this great station for the opportunity. We have an account on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. We have so many contemporary forms of trumpets, which today is the social media that can get the word to the people. And it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly kosher. We have to be able to speak to the people. And whatever works best should be used. But the menorah, the basic, the foundation, is not an instrument. It's not just an instrument to communicate a message. It is the message itself. We can't dilute and change and find all kinds of excuses to minimize the message. The menorah must remain a menorah. The trumpet, good. We have our modern day of presenting a message, but the message has to be true. and has to be connected. It has to be truth. If it's not true, it's not eternal. And truth must be eternal. I remember, launching our first Chabad website some years ago. And we all know, if you're into that social world, social media, you have to update constantly. You have to redesign it, make it look more enticing. But the content, the Torah portion, the insights from the Talmud, what God wants from us, that remains the same. But the presentation and the packaging, can develop and move with the times. I remember years ago, the Lubavitch Rebbe was criticized. He allowed himself to be seen right from 770 Eastern Parkway, talking to his followers, and it was now being broadcast on cable TV. At one point, they actually had a hookup called Hanukkah Live, where simultaneously communities around the world would light the menorah all at the same time. It was the same menorah, the same holiday celebration, but using modern-day communications to get the message or to share the message. So there's so many different ways and so many different... But remember, as long as we balance that trumpet, modern-day communications, what's available to us, but the menorah, as Aaron he lit the menorah exactly the way God wants. And sometimes we blur the difference between the means of communications and to the foundation itself. Sadly, many think the way to communicate today Judaism is by watering it down and making, shrift of the sages of yesteryear. That's undermining the very message. Of course, the medium of communications can be a modern one, but the basic menorah must remain the same in all of its details. To continue this idea of that, it's with all media, and the trumpet too. Again, it was a medium. The message rather has to remain the message. Our values are eternal and never changing, but how we communicate those values to the people will change in each generation. Baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Generation Z, all have their own mindsets and need a style of communications that resonates with them. Many times I'm asked to talk to younger rabbis. I always call to mind the sign that is traditionally posted above the prayer. It's called the Amud, the reading stand from where the prayer services are led. In many synagogues, there's a sign over this area that says Da Lifnei Mi'ata Omed, which translates, know before whom you stand. Is obviously a reminder to the prayer leader, the person leading the prayers, to focus on his prayers with intent and concentration. But I often tell the younger rabbis, who I'm often asked to share my own experience, that the same sign should be there for the rabbi too, not just for the person praying at that stand. And what does it say? How does it apply to the rabbis? Know before whom you stand means know your audience. Understand the mentality of the people you're speaking to. If you don't know your audience, your message will fail because you will not be talking to them in a language or a style that can relate to. So any one of us in positions of community leadership, educators, may well need to reinvent themselves, and more than once in our tenure, to be able to adapt and readapt. We will still share the very same subject matter and values, but with new vision. To give you an example, in the last few years, we all had to pivot. Not only a current COVID, part of COVID, we had to pivot in different ways. Adapt or die has been a byword of business strategists for a long time. So while trumpets may be passé, the menorah and its message will never, ever die. With that in mind, again, what's a very important premise to pass on to the next generation? The true message of what has been passed down to us for thousands of generations. There's an interesting mission that discusses, in the name of Rabbi Akiva no less, what do we owe our parents? At the beginning of our program, we discussed different ideas of how to make Father's Day, the upcoming Father's Day, more meaningful. But what do we owe our parents? Think about this. There's so much that we receive automatically if we're born to certain parents, and when they pass on after 120 years, they pass on a will, portfolio. What did you do to gain it? You were born to them, and that's how it works. That the inheritance passes on. So you did nothing to earn that. There could be DNA that's passed on. There can be even our faces, the way we look. There's so many things in our life that we automatically get, from our parents. So what do we owe them? And the Mishnah tells us, most importantly, as we talk to Binyamin Levine, all the way from Shiloh in the Holy Land. Thank you so much, Binyamin. What do we owe our parents? There's only one thing that we owe our parents that we must work hard for and never lose, is that baton of tradition that's being passed on to us as life goes on. The key to thousands of years of Jewish experience and the selflessness that our parents and grandparents provided, that's up to us. The money, all the other things I've discussed, our strengths, the way our bodies are, our, visage, they come to us automatically without too much effort. But to be able to continue on into the future and to ensure that Jewish future is in your hands. Nobody else. There could be no excuses. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. At the end of the day, that is being passed down to us where we owe them that commitment, that what they lived for in so many different ways and what they passed on from their parents and grandparents all the way back, that's what's being passed on to us. So how do we see this? Okay, I admit it. I'm not sure how I would have behaved if I were in the position of those living back in the wilderness. As we read the Torah portions, we're always criticizing, the Jewish people when left Egypt. They were complaining and they wanted fish and they wanted meat and all kinds of things. The question is, how would you and me, if we lived at that time, would we be the same kvetches as they were? Even as God was providing them with the most incredible miracles, bread from heaven, water from the rocks, they were busy moaning and groaning. It was anything good. But would I have acted differently? Who knows? You think it was easy to live in a desert, even with all the miracles as the Bible tells us? I suppose a lot depends on a person's attitude and perspective in life. Recently, I heard a powerful insight in the name of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, one of the outstanding authorities in Jewish law of our time. He passed away in 1986. He was speaking of the generation of the Jewish immigrants to the United States, who spawned what became known as the lost generation. Why was it that children of parents who were observant, who at least traditional, moved so far away from Judaism of their parental homes? How come? So this rabbi argued that it could be summed up in one simple question of attitude. Did those parents convey to their children that Judaism was a burden or a boon, a pleasure or a pain? was the constant refrain these children heard at home? Was it, "Oi, it's hard to be a Jew"? Or was it, "Segit zu sein a Yid"? It's good to be who we are. Was being Jewish in those early days in America something to sigh about? Or was it something to celebrate and sing about? Whether children grew up hearing that Judaism was a pain or a privilege, my friends, says the rabbi, would determine whether they embraced it happily or escaped from it at the first opportunity. So according to Rabbi Moshe, on that hinged the success or the failure of an entire generation. Indeed, we know of many who survived the Holocaust, and because of those horrific experiences perceived, it's really sad. There were those who sought to run as far away as possible from that old European world. Many people found themselves in England and Australia, and they wanted to hide themselves. Some never even told their children that they were Jewish because of what they'd experienced. It is for this reason that I read this in the name of one of the earlier chief rabbis of England, Rabbi Emanuel Jacobowitz. I remember him when I was in London. He argued something very, very interesting. And I say this with the greatest respect for everybody listening or watching. How powerful. Well, he said this. He argued that while Holocaust education was important, there was a danger in overemphasizing the Holocaust in Jewish day schools. You see, why would he say that? And he certainly, we talk about way back, he was the chief rabbi in the 60s. It's very important to know every detail about the Holocaust and to know your own family's background. But if a person overly talks about it every minute of the day, so to speak, the chances are the younger generation won't see Judaism as a blessing. They will see it as a curse. And I will tell you something I experienced myself most recently. Here in Nassau County, the county executive put together a task force, an anti-bias task force, to investigate and give some recommendations on the growing anti-Semitism that is so prevalent these days. I attended this meeting at the chambers, the legislative chambers in Mineola, and there were young men and women of public schools, Jewish boys and girls from different public schools. I won't mention them at this point, but they said that with all the Holocaust education that they hear about, have speakers, it's not helping to curtail what they call the casual anti-Semitism, the stinging remarks that are made to them on a daily basis. Why is that? And there were others at the meeting who made the point of talking about the importance of Holocaust education. My friends, as important it is to talk about Holocaust education, if that's all what Judaism is all about, is to remember the Holocaust, we're giving the wrong message. Because the more you talk about it, only without a passionate, exciting, lovable, inclusive Judaism, filled with happiness and joy, where our children see that Judaism is a blessing and not a curse, then you have something. You have something to talk about. Our Judaism should not be dark and depressing, but we as parents and educators must always bring it forward in a bright, in a joyous manner. And the only way to do this is not just talk about the Holocaust of the past, but talk about lighting Shabbos, bringing light into one's home today, to be studying Torah, to doing acts of kindness, to look at the world and to recognize that every human being can make a difference in this world. Just speaking about the negativity of the evil of those who sought to destroy us is not the guarantee for the Jewish future. This is, as I mentioned earlier on, it's sadly to those who always complained, it's, oi, about this, I can't do this, oi, I can't do that. What do you think the children will think about when we oi about our Judaism rather than be joyous and exciting? I remember having a discussion with a group of businessmen some years ago where we were trying to put together a slideshow to promote one of our local institutions. We were looking for a particularly powerful scene, right? A powerful scene. One prominent doctor suggested that for him, the single most powerful scene in Jewish life was a rabbi walking into a house of mourning, carrying his bag of prayer books. To him, that may have been powerful. But for me, my friends, as a rabbi, I never heard anything as depressing. What am I? The angel of death? Come on. Enough with the death. Thinking of my own father, blessed memory. Very rarely did he overly speak about his negative experiences in the Holocaust. He didn't leave us with that. He left us with living Judaism. The emphasis of going to synagogue 3 times a day, studying it every moment. He had 2 jobs, 2 hard jobs. I only can see my father sitting and praying and enjoying love and showing us the love of Judaism and being a leader in this synagogue. It was a Judaism alive and well, not one just about what others were trying to do to us to destroy us. So the Jews in the wilderness had their own issues. We should try and learn from their mistakes and be more faithful and trusting in the leadership of the Moses of our own time. But beyond that, let's not whine and whimper about the challenges of Jewish life. Let us convey to our children that Judaism is joy and a privilege. I see Dr. Kilshevsky shared a beautiful thought. For me, he writes, it was the bris, it was the circumcisions, it was reaching the point where his own children now were blessed with grandchildren, and he was able to see them participating in this most basic Jewish mitzvah, of course, of being circumcised. Thank you for that. Live, well, a celebration of life. Overly doing with Holocaust, more studies and more studies is excellent. From time to time, I take time out and I reflect and read about it and read about the camps. But that can't be our whole life. Our whole Judaism cannot be in a Holocaust museum. That's not our Judaism. In fact, as I said beforehand, so much effort is put into bringing Holocaust speakers to schools, Jewish schools, public schools, private schools, all kinds of schools, public schools, and yet it doesn't help. Garnished. Does not help. Because on the contrary, if you think about this, what message is being brought up? Jews have a hard time. Judaism, those who wanted to destroy us, as in the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, and the same kind of today. So let us convey to our children that Judaism is joy. It's a privilege. Then, please God, they will embrace it for generations to come. There's one thing that, I know I'm talking about some very tough subjects here today, and I want to thank everybody. Linda Zellickson telling us about her own. Lynn Feldman is telling us her insight. We have Keith Drucker. Thank you so much. Beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody, for your comments. Here's another little area of life that I think, as we get older, we often think about retirement. I just want to tell you, I don't know if you know about this, may not be on your reading or your media list, but in Bnei Barak, just about a week ago, a very, very venerable rabbi, the leader of what is known as the Ponevezh Yeshiva in Bnei Barak, Rabbi Gershon Edelstein passed away. He was one of the most foremost leaders within the religious community worldwide who championed harmony between all sectors of the Israeli public. He always looked to find a way to bring peace and harmony. He passed away at the age of 100. Yeah, 100. Check it out. He never retired. Even at the ripe age of this 100 years old, he maintained the same intense daily routine he had kept at the age of 30, 50, 70. A century young, he actively presided over his yeshiva and delivered daily lectures. In fact, just one day before his passing, he delivered a Talmudical lesson from his hospital bed and was in the middle of preparing his next lecture when he passed away. He remained available for those seeking his counsel and to discuss pressing community issues until his final day. While others his age had retired many decades earlier, this Rabbi Edelstein, of blessed memory, joined the many rabbis and rebbes who continued to lead well into their seasoned age. He continued well past what we would think of retirement age. So I thought it would be interesting to share with you, what does Torah have to say about old age and retirement? We know that different countries have different retirement structures. For example, in Israel and many other countries, compulsory retirement at a certain age is allowed. Once a person reaches retirement age, he collects his or her benefits, gets his gold watch, and goes home and sei gesund. He may be a burnt-out shell of a man who should have retired 20 years ago, or he may be young in spirit and full of energy, with many more years of productivity to give, but as soon as the day dictated by his passport arrives, he can be forced out of his job to spend the next day loitering around his home, eating shakshuka and staring at the ceiling. No, shine. In the United States, on the other hand, termination based on age is generally illegal and it's discriminatory practice. When a worker reaches a retirement age, he may choose to sign the papers and go home to enjoy life, or, if he feels up to it, can perform his duties and is welcome to stay on for many years. Let me give you an example. A good friend of Dr. Kolshevsky was Jewish Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It comes to mind when we look for a good example of an ageless working. When she passed away at the age of 87, she was still an active justice on the court, never having retired. Also of note is the operation rooms nurse at the multi-care Tacoma General Hospital in Washington. Her name was Florence Rigney, who worked for 70 years before finally retiring in 2021 at the age of 96. Hesta Maisa, 96. I'm not talking about 96 proof drinking. She had attempted retirement 3 decades, 30 years earlier at the age of 65, but missing her job so much, she came back 6 months later for another 31 years. Her co-workers said they had to run to keep up with her pace. Which system does the Torah advocate? Retirement or work? This week's Torah portion again tackles this issue head on, where it defines the parameters of the work of the Levites in the Mishkan, in the tabernacles. So thousands of years before German's Iron Chancellor Otto von Bismarck conceived the modern-day system of welfare, insurance, and retirement pensions back in the 1880s, the Torah talked about this in the book of Bamidbar, chapter 8, where it talks about the working schedule for a Levite, and says from the age of 25 years and upwards, the Levite, should enter into the service of the work in the tent of meeting. From the age of 50, he shall retire from the work and do no more work. What does it mean? It goes on to explain that the role of the Levites depended on how old they were. There was a period of preparation, training, at the same time, a period of working. But when it came to a certain point of carrying, because part of their work was to carry the heavy loads, they couldn't do that after the age of 50, as we can imagine, but they could continue with many other aspects of the activities, where there was the singing and where there was other kinds of things, the guarding. And the Rambam, Maimonides, points out that the Levites were encouraged to keep on going beyond the 50 to continue many, many other activities in the temple itself. So basically, the Torah legislates two rules: a direct and unequivocal retirement mandate at the age of 50, where they had to curtail certain activities because they couldn't do them anymore. But at the same time, even if they stopped the physical labor at the age of 50, they didn't just go home. They now could continue on in many other areas. And one of them, which is very important for us to know, that they could now become mentors to the younger generation of Levites, of how to do things. Bottom line is, my friends, there was never, ever in Jewish life a theme of retiring. I retire every time. I retire my first tires on the front of the car, then I retire the ones in the back of the car. That's what it's all about. So again, but why is this? Why is it so important? Because that's really what life is all about. We didn't come onto this world to sit back on the beaches dotting in the Bahamas. Life is much deeper than that. As long as we're alive, we're here to serve Hashem. You could say, well, why just let the Levites retire after a certain age and go home and relax? They've been working for decades. They didn't get paid. So why not can't they go home and sit around? So we all know, certainly from the Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe taught us of the importance of working and creating and achieving at every possible moment. Work is not just a way of making a living and surviving. It's the reason that we're here to begin with. We came into this world to be partners with the Creator and make our contribution to the enterprise, to the world. What is life is all about? It's to create. The happy and content person is the one who's constantly feeling he and she is contributing something, because there is only one, the only way he can truly fulfill the purpose of his own creation is when we are contributing to society, whatever we're doing. This is your host, Rabbi Perl. Thank you for joining us today for this multiple subject kind of discussion today. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week, and looking forward to hearing good news with good health.
This show on 90.3 WHPC is brought to you by Crest Cleaners, located on Wills Avenue in Alberton. Crest Cleaners is a professional dry cleaning company servicing the North Shore of Long Island. Crest Cleaners offer pickup and delivery services, custom tailoring and alterations, wedding and christening gowns, cleaned and preserved, personal laundering, wash and fold, ski and snowboarding apparel, camping gear, and more. If it's special to you, it's special to Crest Cleaners. More information is available at crestcleaners1.com.
This show on 90.3 WHPC is brought to you by CarStar Celebrity Chase Collision, with 2 locations in Limerick and Oceanside, who remind you that New York State law says you always have the right to choose which shop will fix your car. CarStar Celebrity Chase Collision offers a full range of services.